Are you currently looking to buy a new camera? Or maybe you'd like to upgrade? Well, there are really rapid advancements all the time technologically, and there's just a flood of information, so much out there. So how do you cut through all of that? You need to, and there are some things that you really should know before making your decision. So this video is your guide to choosing a new camera, or maybe not choosing a camera at all. And just keep one thing in mind. All the information here is particularly applicable if your main interest is travel photography, people photography, photography of real life. I'm making this video in a house that we're renting. Our home on wheels was destroyed about a month ago, so we've had to stay here while we figure out a replacement. If you'd like to help me get back out there on the road faster, then please visit my GoFundMe. Consider helping out. Every little bit will be very useful as we are getting very close to the goal. Okay, so fairly recently I got a new camera. I went to Spain to shoot a project for the Andalusia Tourism Board, and I wanted to use the opportunity of being in Europe, of getting a nice payday to finally get a new camera, to upgrade, which of course really means replace, my workhorse photo camera, the Sony a7 III. I have bought another couple of cameras since I got this one, but the main purpose of those was not photography. The new camera that I got is my first primarily photo, not only photo, but primarily photo camera in the past, 6 years. So what camera did I get? Well, just keep in mind that this is not a review. I will talk about some of the camera's features, but I'm not going to have examples and all of that stuff, so just keep that in mind. And so, this is the camera that I got, the Sony a7 II. In this video, I'll talk about what kinds of factors you should consider if you're getting a new camera or if you're upgrading like me. I think that these things don't get talked about enough. Everybody just kind of gets excited with the latest, greatest gear, but in reality, unless you are a YouTube gear reviewer, all of that stuff is absolutely noise and has very little to do with photography. My aim here is to give you tips to be as analytical and as critical as possible in your pursuit of the perfect camera, without going crazy on spending for no good reason. Mind you, if I had to get a new camera right now, after our home on wheels has been destroyed and there are all these extra expenses involved, there is no way in the world that I would have bought this camera. This was a great opportunity that I didn't want to miss. It was not a necessity, and I want you to consider this when watching the video and when making your own decision. So what is the first thing that you should consider when buying a new camera or when you're thinking whether to upgrade or not? Well, this is something that I've only really come to appreciate recently. Might already be very obvious for some of you, but if you're like me, maybe you've always underappreciated the design and the ergonomics, or maybe you weren't aware of it or as aware as others. I don't know. For me, when I started out, I had my Canon cameras, I stuck with them, and I never really questioned the design. Then I very briefly had a Fuji, the X100S, back in the day, and I did think, wow, the design is amazing. It makes me want to take the camera with me everywhere that I go. Then came the Panasonic Lumix cameras that I had over the years. I think that Panasonic is great at design and ergonomics. As a result, I was never really conscious of the ergonomics with the Lumixes. The design was great, and I guess I just kind of took that for granted. When I switched to the Sony a7 III, I also didn't initially think much of the design. But then when I got the Sony a6400 and the Sony a7S III, I realized only one of these cameras feels good in my hand as a photo camera, and that's the smaller Sony a6400. I often hold my cameras like this in one hand. I even prefer to hold it in my fingers, and I need to be able to reach the shutter button effortlessly. I want to be nimble with the grip, to get all kinds of angles and to react quickly. I think that I have pretty regular hands, and with smaller cameras like the GX9, it's really effortless. You can see the smaller Sony was perfect. With the Sony a7 III, it was kind of possible, but You see, it was a bit of an effort, and whenever I'd hold the camera like this, I did always worry that, after my hand would get tired, it'd just slip out of my grip. So this was a big factor when I was watching reviews of the Sony a7C II. I was imagining how I would grip this camera, how it would feel in the hand. I've learned that the better the camera is to use for you, this is a very individual thing, but the better it is for you, the more comfortable, the more chance you have of taking it with you and actually making photos. Now, ergonomically, the Sony a7C II is not at the top of the game, but it is good enough. And it's also small enough. And I didn't get it because of the ergonomics and the form factor. I got it because of the features that it has and good enough ergonomics and form factor. I strongly believe that you should have a similar approach. Perfection might not be possible for everything, but consider these factors and pick the overall best package. This is very, very important, and of course applicable if you already have a camera. In my case, I can say that the feature set of my Sony a7 III is good enough for most part, even now. But with all of the advances in tech, a question does arise. Is there something that could help me be more successful as a photographer? Not some magical feature, maybe not even some radical improvement, but let's say that you can get a 20% better autofocus, or a better image buffer that can help you process images in burst mode faster, or maybe a more responsive touchscreen. Maybe such factors, when combined with some of the smaller features, they become enough of a reason to upgrade. Then, after watching some reviews, I figured that, okay, at least in theory, all of the features when combined are barely good enough to upgrade to the Sony a7C II. In this camera, there are more autofocus modes. The autofocus is more accurate, more advanced. It shoots more frames per second, and it does have a better image buffer. It is definitely smaller, and a very important one for me is that the touchscreen is definitely very responsive, and it wasn't responsive, or not very responsive at all, on the Sony a7 III. Any one of these features is not a good enough reason for an upgrade, but when they are all combined together, they become a good enough reason. Is the difference, the improvement, going to be like night and day? Not in my case, definitely, and I do not think that that'll be the case in most situations. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say that this camera is like 20 to 30% better than this one. And if you occasionally make photos, or you don't know why you would need those features that I've just mentioned, then you don't need an upgrade. For me, as a professional who makes thousands and thousands of photos, those 20 to 30% in the long run are just huge. Now, in my situation, the next feature that I'm going to mention is very specific to me, but you should always consider such features as well. I think that it's important to make the most of any equipment that you may already have. I have this really nice Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens. I really loved using it with the Sony a6400, so it is a lens for the APS-C sensor. But I did sometimes use it for video on the Sony a7 III. Of course, I had to crop in post. Well, my new camera allows you to crop in camera. And because the sensor is 33 megapixels, you can even use the crop feature for photos. And you still get about 14 megapixels, which is plenty for like 95% of users. Ask yourself, with the equipment that you have, is there a specific feature that might be really worthwhile to you? In fact, please share this in the comments, because I'm sure that we will all learn something. Again, such feature alone might not be a game changer, but it could be the final decisive factor. I know, I said that I bought this primarily to be a photo camera, but I do shoot video too. Mostly I shoot video with my Sony a7S III, which I'm shooting this on now. But since video features are pretty much in every camera these days, then why not get a camera that has the video features that are useful for you? The thing is, I am mostly using this for stills. But sometimes something comes up and I just want to grab a quick video. Or sometimes I might have a wide angle lens on the camera and I might want to just say a few words to camera. I don't want to have to reach for the Sony a7S III. I don't want to change lenses. So having a camera with great video capabilities by your side is a great thing. Of course, the Sony a7 III shoots good video, but it doesn't have 10-bit. And if you want to do any more advanced color grading, then in short, 10-bit is the way to go. Add in all those autofocus features to the video on top of the 10-bit, and the video capabilities of this camera suddenly made an upgrade much more enticing. If you're buying your first and maybe only camera, then the video features are even more important to consider. Do you think you'll shoot at least a little video? From experience, and despite all the marketing of phones, I will say that having something that gives you more creativity in video than a phone is not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. Consider that all of these features, they're out there, they are available, and you may want to shoot more video in the future. You have a child, I don't know, maybe a dog, and suddenly you want the possibility to get more creative with video. Ask yourself a very simple question. Does my budget allow me to get a camera with those features? And if it does, then why not get that camera? Just in case. So, well, these are the different kinds of factors to consider when you're buying a completely new camera or when you're upgrading. But remember, your factors may be completely different to mine. The idea that I'm communicating here is that you really should weigh things up. Don't just fall for the hype. If you have an unlimited budget, then you shouldn't even worry about any of this, but I know that for most of you, or at least for many of you, the camera will not be a professional tool. Or you need to make one good purchase for a few years, like I did. And then let's say that you are ready to fork out $2,000+ or whatever it is for a new camera, and then you ask yourself these kinds of questions and you realize, no, really what I have is good enough, and no feature set, no combinations of features really justify getting a new camera. Then you can use $2,000 for quite a bit. You can buy a return ticket to quite many places. You can go on a road trip. You could buy some very solid lenses, attend workshops, some kinds of courses. You get the point. Now let's say that you're getting your first camera and you're just getting into photography. You find yourself a second-hand Sony a7 III or whatever other brand, it doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. And it's in good condition and it only costs $1,000. On the other hand, the Sony a7C II, a new one, is what? $2,100 to $2,300. The $1,000 difference, or in this case a little bit more, can get you a couple of really solid prime lenses. Do you need all the latest greatest features more than you need some nice glass? I would say that if you are just starting out, in most cases the answer is no. But again, ultimately it does come down to your situation and your intentions. Think carefully about all of the factors that I've mentioned in this video and consider some more that might be important to you. Do not buy because of the hype, because all of your favorite YouTubers are talking about the same camera. This is strategic and it's done to get your attention. Also, when people talk about something being future-proof, I think that this is only part true. Pretty much all modern cameras are capable of making good photos. They could do that yesterday, certainly they can do it today, and they'll be able to do it a few years into the future as well. Video features have been really good for about 5 or 6 years. But once the marketing of a new camera starts, then you will be made to feel like the new camera will just change everything for you. For most of us, very, very rarely is this the case. I hope that this video has been useful for you. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask, comment, share your thoughts, and if you'd like to see me create more videos like this one and get back out there on the road and not have to shoot against a boring background like this one, then please check out my GoFundMe and consider helping out. Thank you so much for your time, and if you'd actually like to learn about photography, then check out the video that's on the screen now.